like for you being the running backs coach and leading this group?
It's been awesome. It's been a fun transition as far as taking the leading role of the running back coaching position. And I think the biggest difference between last year and this year, as far as being the assistant versus the running back coach, is the recruiting part of it, of being able to get out on the road, going and seeing guys, having conversations with parents, talking to coaches. When we're doing local recruiting out on the road, and being able to just get to know those local coaches as well as some of the other high school coaches out of state. But as far as the X's and O's, the scheme, the accountability part of it, of meeting with those guys, making sure academics are in order, nutrition, strength and conditioning, a lot of that stuff I was already sort of involved in before as the assistant. So recruiting would be the biggest part.
And what was it like for you coaching alongside Alonzo? Really over the last couple of years, but especially the last year working with the running backs.
Yeah, it was good. I think Coach Carter is a real people person. He's able to understand the personalities, especially the different types of personalities amongst these young guys. So understanding that part of it, and having his help with a lot of the communication that we were doing on how to handle different personalities, where guys were from, and how it was, being from Texas, being from, Bay Area, being from, Orange County. Like, there's different types of lifestyles in those areas. So I think, his help of kind of breaking it down and giving me insight to what that is as he was hitting the road recruiting was really helpful with just creating a connection as he stepped on campus.
Cohen, and then Juan.
Not your first time being a running back coach. You've had experience in the past, but kind of through that time where you kind of took a break from it, what was the biggest thing you learned about coaching running backs?
I think the biggest thing, coaching quarterbacks versus running backs it's to me, it's two different worlds, man. With quarterbacks, a lot of times you're talking about coverages and being able to see the secondary and obviously there's a lot of involvement in the box as far as a quarterback identifying what's going on. So that was really helpful just in terms of being able to understand the big picture. But as you get into the world of the running back, well, now you're understanding blocking schemes, you're understanding protections and how that works. And so having that background of being a quarterback, coaching quarterbacks, and understanding coverages and how those are tied to the fronts, and now being in control of the running backs, seeing the big picture has been the greatest thing about having that background coach position.
And then speaking of your running backs, you return Quincy and Kendrick. How is it kind of just having that stable presence that you had last year as well come back?
It's awesome, man. I think we've got a great group of men, of leaders, and I think that's the number one goal as a position coach is you're always trying to create leaders within your position group that can lead the charge rather than always being the spokesperson, always trying to reinforce things. But when you've got guys like that are experienced, that are veteran guys that have played a lot of college football, and really taking on that role, it's like having two assistant coaches in the room already. And so the expectations, not just from me, are also from the guys in the room, and I think that raises the level of competition, it raises the level of expectations, as well as the standard.
Juan and Justin.
You kind of mentioned already about Kendrick and Quincy were within Park Spring, how the younger running backs work, and what does it set up for the future of the running back group?
Yeah, I think it's been a great spring so far. I believe Wesley, Yarborough, Cornelius Warren, and Antoine Roberts. I would consider him new to the this many reps as well, being that it's his first time playing Arizona football. So the type of spring we're having has been awesome. The things that you would expect from guys that are getting their first turn with Corn and Wes, of going through those learning, challenges every single day and taking the reps, as well as Antoine just getting the feel for, the chemistry part of it, understanding different strengths and weaknesses of each play, each concept, each scheme, and how important the details are. I think it's so much that we're learning day to day as a position group, especially those three guys, that it's just been awesome. It's been awesome, and you can see it too. They're starting to lead by example of what Ked and Quincy have done. Wesley and the benefit to Wes and Corn is that they've seen it done with Ked and Quincy this past fall, and so they know what red line is. They know what that you got to execute, right? The effort, right? The accountability part of it. And so there is no excuse for them to not know what it is. They know what that standard is as a running back here at Arizona because of those guys that have done it this past year. And so it's cool because now and then, every now and then you'll see one of those young guys take charge, and it's a proud moment for me because now I know that they're starting to feel that confidence, right? Having that confidence, getting out of their shell, no longer sitting in the back, but ready to, be the leader of the group, and so it's just leading on the charge with that next generation.
Justin and then Nathaniel.
Over the last couple of years, we've heard the Carterisms, the no block, no run, fast, violent, physical. Do you have any mantras or anything that you spend in the running back room?
Yeah, we had a little bit of carryover from Coach Carter. The one thing that we always broke every meeting, every practice was the FVP, which stood for fast, violent, and physical. So now this year I've kind of tweaked it to where we'll break on start fast and finish violent.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so we want to be able to be familiar with obviously the term violence, but be comfortable with it by saying it, by doing it, by living it. That's one thing that we take pride in. We've got to approach this game because violence this is the one sport where you can get away with violence as long as it's within the rules, within the whistle, right? But it's actually welcome, and you actually get paid big money for it, right? And so that's something we want to be familiar with, comfortable with. Looking forward to embracing the violence and delivering the violence and not running away from it.
What was the process like to get Antoine Roberts in, and can you share with us his skill set and just how do you think he's going to fit into what you guys are doing?
I think Antoine Roberts has been a great addition to the program overall. Man, he's a great kid. Has played a lot of football, has faced adversity in his past, and I think there's something to that. I think there's something to some of those guys that you're able to get on your roster that have faced some big time adversity and they were able to get through it and find their way back to the field. I think there is something to that as far as building a culture. I believe that's the type of culture we're creating, is being able to look adversity in the face and overcome it. And I believe that's something that he's familiar with, and he's shown that. And as far as being here as a Wildcat, man, he's fitting in with the guys. It's as if he's been here for 3 years in a row. As far as the chemistry that they built in a short time. He's a smart kid. He cares a lot. The care factor is there. He's always coming in for the extra, the unrequired, the in between, and again, just being able to see that the steps that he's made, the steps that he's taken so far in such a short time, you just know that he's a natural born leader. And so now you take those other two guys that have experience from this past season, and you throw Antoine in the mix. And as far as like him picking up information, picking up the playbook, he's so smart, he's able to obtain information. And then obviously like the execution part of it we're working on right now. But the cultural piece, being a good teammate, fitting in with the rest of the room, all those pieces are definitely checked off, and it's been awesome to have him.
Nathaniel and Cohen.
Yeah, just your comments on Seth Daggy, anything you guys have shared with each other, any advice you guys have given each other?
Yeah, I think it's it's always I think the special thing about myself and Coach Daggy is we have a good feel for just kind of the temperature of the room. I think that's important just in terms of being for offensive coordinator, right? He's got a plan, he's got directions for us as assistants, and so I think it's important as far as our alignment goes to have a feel the temperature of, Coach Daggy's making a statement. He wants this message to be delivered and clear cut for our guys. So make sure you deliver that message to your guys in the same fashion. And I also think there's times where, he'll ask for advice and he wants to talk and kind of bounce thoughts off of your, what you think as an assistant coach. And so you have a conversation. Then there's just some times where, you just see him redlining, and coaches sort of say redlining and as I just understand that, give him his room, and let him go through it on his own, and then when he's ready to communicate and ask questions, then he'll come to us. But I think having that understanding, that true alignment amongst the staff, and that's just with everybody. I believe we all have a good feel for each other as far as alignment and understanding each other's, temperature and, okay, Big O's, Coach Oglesby, he's obviously not happy. You can tell that based off of what you hear halfway across the field, and so maybe this question about protection, I'll wait a few periods. So I think having that understanding, but I think Coach Daggy is awesome. He's one of the best coordinators I've been around as far as taking in, information about what are your thoughts about this and how do you think we should do that. And obviously, ultimately, he makes a decision on what goes in and what doesn't. But still, just having someone that's leading the charge to ask you for your input. If you have any sort of experience, can you teach me? It helps to motivate us as position coaches, assistant coaches, to always be digging for more, how to get better, how can we create a better offense, how can I create a better environment for my group. It helps us, to execute what we're trying to get done as an offense.
Cohen and Justin.
Coach, I think most would say Quincy was a pleasant surprise last year, kind of the way he forces his way onto the field.
Mhm.
What do you think is the next step for him as he kind of projects probably to have more of a workload this year?
But I think it's exactly along the lines of what we've been talking about. Now it's like, okay, you're a great player. Can you be a great teammate? Can you become a great leader? I think there's still parts of his game that we can, maximize as we get him back out there again. But the biggest part is, all the answers, but can you help these guys figure it out to know it just as well as you do? That's been my biggest challenge to those returning guys, because they've been through the fire. They've seen the live bullets, and they know the correct way and the incorrect way of doing it. And so it's like, okay, so can you take that knowledge that you have, that experience that you have, and help this guy to understand it just as much as you do? Because these guys don't have the experience, but they're going to get it. And will they be ready for it? Well, let's try to help, push that thing along as far as we can.
We'll finish up with Justin.
Seemed like Ken was like Mr. Red Zone last year. In your opinion, what makes his skill set perfect for inside the red zone? Why do you think he had so much success inside the red zone?
I think he's just he obviously, his size, his ability to be able to run through guys is something that's been a part of his identity since high school. I think if you go all the way back to his high school clips, his recruiting tapes, you can see, okay, why you were so recruited, highly recruited, the way you were coming out of high school. And to me, just his physical ability to be able to take on that one-on-one, right? You always try to play to the strength of these guys' ability. You never want to put these guys in a position to where you're asking a bigger guy to do fly sweep stuff and run the perimeter and all that. Like that doesn't make any sense. So I think naturally he's kind of fit his way into that role as we started to get into more of those situations. And last year we had so much of a three-headed monster, as I used to call it, with the ability to put Quincy, Ked, or Izzy in. But naturally, you can just see as you start to invest more reps in practice, and then you get into game situations like who feels comfortable and who can get it done. So a lot of that stuff is just based off of execution.
Is it fair to say the second half of the season you guys started to do better things?
Yeah, I think.
Why do you think that was?
I think it's just you got to be creative. I think again, credit goes to Coach Daggy, Coach Oglesby, as well as Coach Miller and the rest of the staff of being able to put us in the right position schematically. Because we're just like any other team running late into the country or running late into the season. You start to deal with injuries. You start to deal with guys being nicked up. Like, okay, well now you don't have a three-headed monster. Now you only got two. Now you only have two tight ends available. Well, now you got to get creative as far as the scheme part of it. And I think we did a really good job of adjusting in game. I would say that was something that Coach Oglesby, Coach Daggy, Coach Miller, they all did a really good job during halftime of making halftime adjustments and being able to play off of the tendencies that we're seeing from the opposing defense. So I think part of it was that, and then the other part is just driving home, the mentality. I think that's something that you build up now and you face in November and December. You talk about mentality. If that's not something that you're established amongst the whole team, well, you're going to wish you did when your one and your two go down, and now it's down to your third guy. Has he established that same mentality? So I think now is the time to really check to see, are we all in it, or is it just the first group and the second group? And then the more we can create that amongst the whole team, no matter who's in, no matter what play is called, it's the mentality that's going to get us through.
Awesome. Thank you guys.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.